Disclosure Day is the latest film from director Steven Spielberg and writer David Koepp, and is the fourth Spielberg film to release that is primarily focused on aliens, after Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T., and War of the Worlds. The film follows Daniel Keller, played by Josh O'Connor, as he goes on the run after becoming a whistleblower to expose secrets about aliens that have been hidden for decades. It also follows Margaret Fairchild, played by Emily Blunt, who begins to experience strange, unexplained phenomena. The two eventually team up, hoping to prove that intelligent life other than humans does indeed exist. In a lot of ways, this feels like an obvious next step in Spielberg's continued interest in the idea of extraterrestrial life. While his previous alien-focused films have dealt with the arrival of aliens and first contact, Disclosure Day proposes the question, what if they're already here? And in doing so, he twists the concept enough that this doesn't end up feeling redundant when compared to the rest of his work. I think it's also worth noting that this movie isn't necessarily totally focused on aliens for the entire runtime, and is more so focused on Margaret and Daniel first finding each other and then evading capture from the corporation the secrets were stolen from. It just so happens that these secrets do involve aliens, which of course does become increasingly important as the film continues, but for a decent portion of the movie, you could change what this information is, and a lot of it would stay mostly the same. Humans are also the enemy here rather than the aliens. I think this fits where Spielberg takes the film thematically, as despite this movie obviously dealing with aliens, Spielberg spends a lot of time looking inward, contemplating what full disclosure might look like for everyday people, rather than looking outward into the cosmos and asking any kind of grand questions about the universe. Religion is a topic heavily explored throughout. Jane, who is Daniel's girlfriend, is someone who was deeply religious in the past and still carries a lot of that with her. The movie spends some time with nuns, and one of them in particular has great importance in this exploration of religion. Disclosure Day questions how people's belief in God, or some form of higher power, might change when introduced with the undeniable fact that aliens are real. More largely, it questions how the entire world might fundamentally change when such a shocking truth is revealed. This is a film also really ingrained into the idea of government conspiracies, weaving in real-world alien stories like the 1947 Roswell incident, and ideas associated with aliens like crop circles. Spielberg and Koepp are very obviously trying to present us with a world not too dissimilar to our own, giving us an idea of disclosure that might not be too dissimilar from how it would look in reality, if stuff like Roswell is actually true. The film does also go in a bit more of a supernatural direction with some things. Emily Blunt is also fantastic in this. In general, I think most of the performances range from being maybe just a little bit questionable to me to being good, but Blunt is easily the standout here, and it's my favorite performance in the movie. I think some of this is just due to her character providing the most opportunity for impressive acting, but I do think there are moments where a lesser performance would have started to feel too much like overacting, but Blunt strikes a good balance, and I don't think I ever felt like she was doing too much. John Williams' score is also fantastic, to the surprise of no one, and it particularly soars in the final 20 to 30 minutes of the film, which just in general is probably my favorite portion of it. The ending especially was something I really appreciated, as Spielberg and Koepp chose to leave the audience questioning themselves rather than providing any clear answers for them. I would imagine that for a decent amount of people walking out of this movie, it's going to start some kind of conversation, and I think that's always a good thing. Despite this praise, I do think that a lot of Disclosure Day doesn't really actually feel like a Spielberg film. I often felt like it was missing his usual flair that makes his stuff stand out amongst many of his contemporaries. Most evidently the framing, the camera movement, and blocking, which I think all usually combine to make Spielberg's movies feel really dynamic and fluid, feel really alive. To me, it just doesn't have that same confident, super polished feel that his movies usually do. The feeling that he's kind of perfected the Hollywood formula. It almost feels, and it sounds crazy to say this, but that this movie could have been directed by any other solid, competent director, and of course that would still mean that it has good direction, but again, it just doesn't feel like Spielberg to me. Especially some of the blocking, I think, is not up to par with what you would expect from someone who is usually so good at it. I feel like there were many opportunities throughout the movie to add some amount of fluidity to the frame, like for example, one moment where a train is passing as two characters talk in a car, and instead of putting that train in the frame, the camera faces away from it. There's car chases that feel flat and uninteresting. Like we are doing little more than just following that car and not working to add any kind of other visual interest. And there are moments here where I feel like you can see some of what makes Spielberg's directing usually so good shine through, but it feels kind of few and far between. Even with some of his movies I haven't loved, the directing almost always still stands out, and it's usually the writing that brings it down. That being said, I still do think the writing is not great here. Some of the dialogue feels super overwritten and heavy-handed, and it makes a lot of moments feel overly melodramatic. Like it's trying way too hard to be emotional and profound, but it just feels forced. Like it isn't coming from a real place for any of these characters. It's not giving me the opportunity to feel how I want to feel, to have a genuine reaction. It very much seems like it's forcing me to feel a certain way, and that made a lot of these moments ineffective. Any amount of emotion I did feel felt like it was just purely coming from John Williams' score. And it's unfortunate because I think I did see the potential for some of these moments to actually be effective, but it is just brought down by poor writing. It also too often felt like the plot only moved forward because characters were making stupid decisions. Like Spielberg and Koepp already knew what the next set piece was going to be, but didn't know how to make the plot naturally flow towards it. And so a character would just have to make a dumb decision to get to that point. There's also this whole sort of thing that I guess is like World War III going on in the background. It's introduced pretty early and is eventually sort of used as a, I guess, comparison point to say that, you know, aliens being real is like way more important. But I think even with that, it hardly justifies its existence, as I don't think its eventual use adds anything to the film. And like with some of the dialogue I was talking about before, it just makes it seem like the movie is trying too hard. Like it's trying to just really hammer home just how significant this would be, when I think everybody kind of already knows that full disclosure on aliens would be very significant. At the end of the day, this is still a decently entertaining blockbuster, but I think it could have been more. I've never been as big on Spielberg's movies as a lot of other people are, but he's someone I really respect. And like I said earlier, almost always provides great directing regardless of what I think about the rest of the movie. So for that feeling to not even really be here for me does add another layer of disappointment. For me, Disclosure Day is a 3 out of 5. If you'd like more film reviews like this one, I would love for you to subscribe and leave a like on this video, but any amount of support is appreciated. Thanks so much for watching The Final Take, and have a good day.